Today I'm here in Sandy Hook with Chris Brenner, local documentarian. I want to call you a historian also. Can I do that?
It's a stretch, but okay.
It's so not a stretch. Chris has made a film about many things in our area, one of which is Highlands Beach, and we are in front of the house where the Sandless family lived. Chris is going to tell us more about it, but the reason I'm doing this piece is because it was brought to my attention by a Sandy Hook aficionado with whom I'm friends with, that there's a petition circling to save this house. And we're looking for signatures, and it's going to be presented to the park system. And we want to tell you the history and why we're standing here. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Lauren. Thanks for having me. Yeah, this is an amazing property. We're standing on what was once one of the first tourist resorts of what became Jersey Shore tourism. Back in the 1870s, some visionaries had some ideas when it looked very barren like it does now, that this would make a great spot for a day trip destination for city dwellers. And what they built was something that rivaled Coney Island. And it's right where we're standing on this crazy piece of land.
It's unbelievable. I didn't even know this house was here, and I grew up here. And then you started to show me just the expanse that was this resort. My mouth even hangs open as I'm trying to say it. Can you say a little bit about what was here and what it looked like? And just, it
Sure.
was so spectacular.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with Sandy Hook, from about where the pay gate is now, all the way back to the current Highlands Bridge, was the space that the resort, Highland Beach Resort, occupied. And over the years, starting around 1888, it housed everything from, would you believe, one of the country's first roller coasters. It was right here where the roadway is now. And then a whole bunch of other things over the ensuing years, like carousels and restaurants and nightclubs and a movie theater and just all kinds of things. Lockers. You could rent a bathing suit here, a wool bathing suit.
No.
And I've always said nothing says summer like putting on a rented wool bathing suit in July. So you could rent bathing suits right where we're standing, pretty much. And
I didn't know they used to be wool. Is that
yeah,
why
those
is
full-length wool. Well, that's what they had.
So it's like post-war. That's what was the
like
least
turn of the
expensive.
century. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So and then they would clean them in like lye soap. So I'm sure they smelled really good. But yeah. So thousands and thousands of people came here because at first there was a steamship dock right here. And so people came down on the paddle wheelers from the city by the thousands to spend the day here. And then later it became such a big resort that the Central Railroad in New Jersey put a spur from Atlantic Highlands, where they had the pier, and ran it right over here through Highlands, through what's now the bar's parking lot, across the river, and there was a railroad station just behind where we're standing. And for example, in 1910, 125,000 people came here. That summer, and regularly on weekends they would get 15 to 20,000 people on this land. So it was quite a place.
So the train ran from Long Branch to here, right?
To here, it connected up. So at different times it did different things. Originally in the 1860s, it ran from Long Branch just out to Sandy Hook, a little further out to Spermaceti Cove, and there was a steamboat dock there that you could go to the city. But that's all it did. It just ran back and forth. And then later, I guess closer to the turn of the century, when the Central Railroad bought it, they added on this spur that went across the river and connected up to Atlantic Highlands to the rest of their system.
So you had people via train, on
train,
foot,
boat, whatever. And then in 1910, when cars started to come around, you had all three, and that's why it was the biggest year here ever.
When did things get taken down gradually, or was it one massive demolition? I hate that these buildings were knocked down. Do you know anything about how that was done?
Sure. Yeah, there's lots of different phases, of course, it was a course of 75, 80 years, right? So there were a lot of different phases. Basically, after World War II, it was really the construction of the Parkway had a lot to do with what changed tourism around here. As we know, northern Monmouth County now, sure, it's tourism based, but it's not like Seaside Heights or that area, right? And the Parkway had a lot to do with that, because the Parkway was started construction in the 50s and 60s, allowed people to just drive further south, and so they sort of leapfrogged this area. And so that changed things, and that's when you started to see like our beach clubs that we know today, which are more for local people. So right after World War II, the Highland Beach Resort changed, and they changed the name to the Sandless Baths and then eventually Sandless Beach Club, and it became really basically the first beach club in the area that worked on that model, starting back then. And then sadly, in 1962, starting a little bit earlier than that, the Army pulled back from Fort Hancock and sold about half of Sandy Hook to the state of New Jersey. And they made it Sandy Hook State Park, the first time it was opened as beaches. And the state just basically filed an eminent domain case and sued the Sandless family and basically took the land. Paid them, but took the land. So that's what ended it. So 62 was the last season it was here, and they destroyed everything except this house.
I didn't realize that that's how that came to an end. So the history on the house, so it was purchased by William Sandless?
William Sandless was the original founder in 1888, and he's the one. He was a carpenter and kind of he sold champagne. He was a really astute businessman, but a really handy craftsman. And he built a lot of the structures himself with his crew. Like, he was like a really hands-on guy.
That's so cool.
And they built amazing things. Like, in the course of a winter, they would build like a whole city. Like, it was just what you could do back then, right? No, didn't need permits, didn't need, you just did it. And so the property morphed over time. And so, like, originally the big attraction was this roller coaster. It was called the Switchback Railroad. A smaller version of the same thing they had at the first roller coaster at Coney Island, made by the same guy, actually.
Oh, was it really?
The same guy. And when that kind of ran its course, after about 5 years, it became, it wasn't so popular anymore. They repurposed it, and we found out later that he dismantled the roller coaster and built this structure that then became a sundry store and a bowling alley, which actually sat in what would be the middle of the road today. That structure is what you see behind us. And the timbers from the roller coaster are what makes up this house. And the house was moved from the middle of the road because during World War II, the Army needed to widen the road so they could get everything out there for the fort. And so they made them move it. And they put it on logs and they rolled it over here to its present location. So it's been here since 1939.
So it's almost 100 years in this location.
Yep.
And you have been in the house.
I have.
With an architect and an engineer, you said?
I have.
And you said it's completely structurally sound.
Very, very solid. The timbers, obviously, it was a roller coaster. Like, it's built like you wouldn't believe. And then on top of that, William Sandless was a great carpenter. And, back then they didn't use plywood and things. It's all thick boards and, heavy lumber. And he was building a structure to be on the, facing the ocean. So he knew he had to build a tough house, and he did.
You said there are drains in the basement that withstood Sandy. The house withstood Sandy.
The house did not take any water on the first floor in Sandy at all, and we're a few feet from the river here, so, and a few 50 yards from the ocean. So yeah, pretty amazing.
And he raised a family of 5 in here, right?
That was actually his son Henry. He raised a family of 5, right? So William Sandless had 2 kids. He had another William, his son, and then his other son Henry. And Henry's family, an extended family, ended up running the resort through later after William Sandless had passed away in the early part of the 20th century.
And so William's granddaughter Susan wrote a book about it.
She did.
And you and she started a foundation.
So a few years back in 2016, I made a film about the Highland Beach Resort, and a lot of that was based on notes and research that Susan had done, and so she rolled that into a book that just came out last year called Sandy Hook's Lost Resort, and highly recommend it. It's got all the details, everything you'd want to know about the property. Amazing details. You get to meet the people that ran the concessions, and she just,
cool.
learned every little thing from family and research, and it's an excellent book. So
how'd she get all that information?
Some of it from family, some of it, she's an outstanding researcher, and Library of Congress, and did all kinds of things. A lot of it was documented.
So cool.
So immigration records and all kinds of things.
I love that. And so you and she started the Heritage Museum?
So yeah, there was a number of concerned people that kind of like now were saying like, this is such a great thing, why don't we save it? And so we'd formed an organization called the Jersey Coast Heritage Museum with the intent of making this some sort of a cultural center, or possibly even moving it to a safer location. None of that was panned out because it's just a complicated political situation. It's on state land and the Park Service has control of it, and they really don't have the money to do anything with it. And it was just very, very complicated, a lot of government red tape. So the effort kind of failed. But now it seems to be rekindled with the advent of some of the leases that they're offering, the Park Service is offering in different parts of the Hook. So Susan's working to try and get this to possibly be like an Airbnb location, which would be amazing.
Unbelievable. I have the chills. It's just so breathtaking. It's because it's untouched. I mean, it's just, and the history, yeah, you can feel it. So the book is called Highland Resort.
It's called Sandy Hook's Lost Resort, Highland Beach. You can find out information there. My website has a page dedicated to Highland Beach as well, and that's destinationspast.com. And then there's also a Facebook page called Friends of Highland Beach. And Susan's got all the information on there as well, so that works also. So
Thank you.
All right, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. So I know you described this, but if people want to kind of take a peek, so we are right when it's before the pay gates, but you have to get through the pay gates. There's a lot on the right where you can park, and then on foot you can get over here.
That's right. You can't drive into here. It's really sits in the nook of the bridge. If you walk up on the walkway that goes over the Highlands Bridge, you get a really beautiful view of the house. If you want to look at it that way, it's another good way if you don't want to get in the sand. But yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Thank you.
I'm Lauren, and you're watching Real Jersey Shore.